And welcome back to Chambers, Changes, and Conversations, the podcast that takes you inside the services, successes, and stories shaping Manatee County government. I'm Communications Division Manager Casey Zempel, along with Government Relations Director Stephanie Garrison, and from U.S. Marine to bodyguard to former Director of Community and Veteran Services, and now Veteran Project Manager for Manatee County's Government Relations Division, this week's guest has worn many hats in service to his community. Today, his work is centered on ensuring that veterans and their families have a voice at the table, and that their sacrifices are honored for generations to come. One of the most meaningful projects he's helping lead right now is the creation of the new Veterans Memorial Park, a dedicated space in our county that will honor service, preserve stories, and bring people together. Today, we're excited to have Lee Washington. Lee, welcome to Chambers, Changes, and Conversations.
Good morning to both of you, and thank you for having me this morning.
Yeah, Lee, let's start with your story. You're a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. Can you share a little bit about how that service shaped you into the person that you are today?
Sure. I was born and raised in Charlotte County, Punta Gorda, Florida, and becoming a Marine was one of those things that I realized when I was in the 7th grade. A young man from our community came home in his dress blues, and he walked into the recreation center, and I just saw everyone's eyes open in amazement of how he carried himself, and I saw the respect that they gave him, and I said, one day that's what I want to be. So from that point forward, I worked towards being a Marine, and I was fortunate to do that when I was a junior in high school to enlist in the delayed entry program, and I served 11 years on active duty. But one thing that the Marine Corps will always do is it'll tear you down and build you up in the way that they think that you need to be best suited for service. And, the character, the ethics, the work ethic and things like that, it really just shaped me to this day, but also how my parents raised me in the community. We always looked out for one another.
There is something about that uniform that's pretty magical.
It's the best.
It's the best. It's the best.
Yeah.
And then what eventually, through your experience with the Marine Corps, what eventually led you here to Manatee County?
Well, after 11 years service, I stayed out in L.A. for a while as a bodyguard, as you mentioned before. But I really miss my family. For 11 years, I was always around the globe doing different things for the nation and really didn't spend a lot of time with my family. So I moved back to Charlotte County, and believe it or not, I was a manager for Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree was expanded in the state of Florida for a while, so I trained up at the Sarasota Square Mall, and they gave me a store down in Burnt Store, Florida, in Charlotte County. And I worked there for about six months as a manager, and a gentleman walked in. He was looking for some household products, and I was walking him around the store and showing him things. He's like, you don't really fit the role of a manager of Dollar Tree. I said, just getting out of the service, trying to find my footing and whatnot, but I'd like to get into finance one day. And he said, that's funny. I'm in mortgage financing, and I want to reach out to you in a couple of days and make you an offer. I said, okay, whatever. Sure enough, the very next day, the president of the company called me, brought me in for an interview, and I started doing mortgages. And that's what actually brought me to Manatee County. I took a job with Countrywide Home Loans back in the day, and I moved to Bradenton, and I worked in the area for mortgage banking for about a decade or so. And then the mortgage crash happened, and I was very fortunate to get on with the VA to help open the Sarasota National Cemetery. And that was a part-time role because it hadn't opened yet, and they were just building that out, trying to envision exactly what that was going to look like. And the county's Veteran Service Office had an opening for a Veteran Service Counselor. So I said, I talk to people every single day, and I applied, and sure enough, I was chosen for the position, and that started my career August of 2009 here at Manatee County, working in community services at the time as a Veteran Services Counselor, and it just, sprang from there.
Oh, it's fascinating. So I want to come back to the Sarasota Cemetery because there's something there that I think you're probably, finding some parallels to the work today. But in the role of the county, how have you seen Manatee County evolve since 2009? I'm curious.
Well, population aside, I think the engagement with the community, when I was in the private sector, I was that citizen who called into the county a few times and no one ever answered the phone. And I was like, here we go again, another county office not picking up the phone. And it wasn't until I became a county employee I realized why people couldn't answer the phone, because you're on the phone. And I think that we've done a great job over the last few decades of sharing with people how county government actually works to make them truly understand, how to get things done. The Citizens Academy that we currently have now, those are the types of things that I see that have been most impactful over the last few decades is the engagement from the community with county government. Granted, we have HOAs that are popping up all around the county, but those folks who are, whether it be locals who have been here their entire lives or transplants from other states, they're finding ways to engage with us, whether it be on Facebook, coming down to the county seat here in Bradenton, engaging with county employees. So I just think the engagement overall and people being involved, what really happens in their communities is what I've seen change the most.
So you're very modest. So I'm going to call you out on the big thing. You're the only other employee besides Charlie who's had the privilege of being county administrator for a period of time too. So tell us about when you were interim county administrator. How did you get there and what was that like?
There's a lot to that, and I just think that I would like to think Charlie Bishop. He was a mentor of mine, whether or not he knew it or not. When I first came on, he was growing into his directorship of property management, and I would just watch him, and we'd have conversations here and there. But I just kept my nose down and just did the work. I come from a community during those times that weren't always easy to access certain benefits and services that the county had to offer. And I just thought that when I came on with the county, I wanted to make sure that never happened again. So I just did the work. If you reached out to the offices that we were involved with, whether it be first thing in the morning or late at night or sending an email in the middle of the night, we made sure that we reached back out to you and connected you what you're asking for. And I just think that work ethic just showed to my leadership that, I was ready for the next step. So I was very fortunate to be promoted in 2013 to the division manager of Veteran Services, and later in 2021 as the director for Community and Veteran Services. And, with leadership changing, early in 2023, I was just tapped to just take over and just keep the lights on, keep this machine running. And I think we did a great job. At the time, it was myself, Charlie Bishop, who is now the county administrator, and Courtney DePaul, but with all the directors. But more importantly for me, it's the line staff. We can't do any of the things that we do as managers without line staff. So my main goal was just making sure that they understood we were there to support them in any way that we possibly could.
So how do you think that experience, you said division manager to director, interim county administrator, how does that all kind of, lend itself to the work that you're doing now?
Well, it definitely puts you in contact with people that you're now having conversations with about a bigger goal. But I think, if nothing else, it just taught me how to be able to speak to just about anyone about anything. Understanding I may not be the smartest person in the room on a particular topic, but my biggest, gift is being able to be quiet and listen. So I think that, what we're doing right now, the consultant team and myself, along with the internal departments, is just having these conversations with individuals, not necessarily asking for anything, just asking for their advice, if anything, not asking for money and things like that. But we're trying to make sure that the project that we're building is going to be very specific to what the community needs, not what we think that they need.
No, I definitely have seen that, over the last year working with you, Lee. You are a calm, steady presence. You ask really good questions. You take no more time than you absolutely need. And it's something that I'm learning, from you as well. And it's just, it's really important, I think, in terms of leadership. So thank you for all of your service to the county, and it's a pleasure to have you back.
It's my pleasure. I love to be back. I'm all about community, but I really miss, Manatee County employees.
Yeah.
Really do, yeah.
So are you still doing so in between, he started the food, he's an entrepreneur too.
I know.
So the Pee Wee's Canteen, are you still doing that every other weekend? Or?
Pee Wee's Canteen is still running full force. We're doing more catering parties. We're working right now on some weddings we have up in Tampa this weekend. So, life is good. It's full.
What's the one thing no one should miss from Pee Wee's Canteen?
Wow. I would say the pulled pork sandwiches.
Okay, now.
I think Commissioner Cruz likes our Nashville hot chicken sandwiches more than anything, but I think the pulled pork is my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
You heard it here.
Yep. And didn't you have banana pudding too?
We do banana pudding. We don't do it during the week that much because people don't eat desserts during the week.
Yeah.
They have to go back to work, But banana pudding, peach cobbler, those types of things.
There we go.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what we're working on now and this incredible legacy project, if I can call it that.
Please do.
And how have we come? How far have we come today? And kind of like where are we at right now? Because we just had a presentation before the board on September 3rd. Tell us where we're at.
So, quick rundown. Obviously, we were conveyed this property back in 1999, and last February 2024, the board voted to turn this into a Veterans Resource Center and Memorial Park. So right now where we are, we have a consultant on board along with our architectural firm and our construction team. And the most important component that we're doing right now is community engagement. As I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that what we build and have for services in that corridor is what the community truly needs. It's not just totally driven by, county and government employees saying, okay, we're going to put some veteran service officers out there and some components of the VA and call it a day. We're not doing that. because not every veteran that we come across, or family for that matter, is going to need those specific services. So right now we're building out an additional survey to go back out into the community to ask you, what specific services would you like to see at this facility? How do you see yourself best engaging with this facility, whether it be short-term or long-term? But more importantly, making it a home for veterans and their families and the community as a whole as a central location for all things community-related. You know, many of us who've come out of the service, you know, we had an environment where everything was in the exact same place every single day. And now that we have become a civilian again, not so much. So where do you go to, you know, get acclimated to being that civilian again? Because remember, we're talking about folks who've served 4 to 30 years in the military, and now they're trying to be better parents, trying to go to school, trying to find employment. Oh, and by the way, dealing with some of the hurdles that they may have physically or mentally, emotionally. And how do you tackle those things if you really don't have good footing of where you turn? You know, we have great organizations throughout our community that are doing very good work. But, you know, as a service counselor back in the day, we would speak with families and veterans who came to our office for VA health care, disability, or just basic advice, but needed a follow-up conversation with someone else in the community. Now they're having to traverse the many highways and byways trying to figure out where that office was, or if just life got in the way, you never made it. So this facility will allow us to have different programs and services all under one roof, so that if a veteran and their family came in, you could walk them down to that next appointment without having to rely on them to come back in a specific time period.
So you spoke of, you know, engagement and how important that is. You know, what are you hearing? Because you have had several like listening sessions. What are you hearing? What kind of services do people want to see at the Veterans Memorial Park?
Most of what we're hearing right now is an expansion for what the VA is currently offering on its clinic on State Road 64. But a lot of veterans, the younger veterans, I would say, really want to move away from the clinical setting. They want to talk more about overall wellness, different aspects of art, different ways to express themselves, and just basic. Sometimes it's a conversation.
Community.
You know, just community. And we don't always necessarily have to have anyone trying to fix us. You know, it's just a conversation just to hear me out, you know, so that I can move on to something else. But, you know, that's what we're really seeing is really we want to have those components that really aren't offered widely through the community, because you can easily go and find a psychiatrist on duty,
right?
Go to the VA and find a social worker to help you through some things. But a lot of us just need to just bounce some ideas off of a fellow veteran or someone who's concerned about our well-being.
Question for you. So it's going to be a hub of resources, building community, as you've described. It's also going to be a memorial park. So tell us about that as well. What are the other pieces that people can look forward to?
So the memorial park, for me, it was one of the key components when presented last February. But as we started to take a look at it and have conversations with our community partners, it really is about the resource center. But one of the aspects of the memorial park is when you turn off Buckeye Road, the plan is to have 5 memorials that represent the journey of every hero who has served. We all started out as civilians, and now that we are no longer in uniforms, we're civilians again. So our goal is to have 5 memorials that represents that. So that first pledge that we're taking in elementary school, that swearing in that we had when we signed up to go into the military, that boot camp service, a monument representing worldwide service, but more importantly to me, at that resource center, that last memorial is that Welcome Home Memorial. Because now Manatee County is being called home for all these individuals, whether it be veterans, families of veterans, or the overall community. It is a welcome home, and now it's our time to support you.
Yeah, nearly 40,000 veterans live here in Manatee County, call it home.
And I would share with you, I mean, that's the number that we use quite a bit because it's an easy number to grasp on. But when we talk about veterans and the impact of their service, we have to keep in mind that we have many National Guard service members. We also have many reserve service members. And when we talk about veterans, a lot of us use the definition that's provided by the federal government. And that's an individual who has served their full first enlistment or a minimum of 2 years under honorable services. But let's say, for instance, you were served in a war period and you smoked marijuana, or you got too drunk and you had a fight and they kicked you out under a bad paper discharge. The rules have now changed since 2014 to allow those individuals to come back into the fold and get those discharges upgraded. So those people weren't counted in that count of 40,000. So when you take a look at all those individuals who identify currently as a veteran, you could probably use the 40,000 number. But when you take a look at the most underserved population of veterans, our women veterans, those veterans who serve in the National Guard or Reserve or have bad paper discharges, I would say 50,000, if not more.
Sure.
But we don't always identify until
Right.
we realize, okay, what's the benefit to me for me sharing that I'm a veteran?
I even also think about the next scope of people. So my dad, 27 years in the Army. I grew up being part of the military life. We moved 10 times before I graduated high school, grew up on Army bases, DOD schools. I know this, that was my way of life. And so in many ways, there's a identification and respect for the military because I'm an Army brat, right? So it's not only the individuals who serve themselves, but their families. I think about my mother's sacrifice and what resources and things that she needed that she never got because as a military spouse, it wasn't there. But on the flip side, I also think about the community that we had. And I have a dozen mothers and fathers that are not related to me, but they treat me that way because when you're deployed or when we lived in Germany, they were like family to me because we didn't have our aunts and uncles and cousins around because we were in a different country. So that military family, too, is a community in of itself that can take advantage of these resources in this community space as well. And so I think this is an incredible opportunity to bring some of that healthy reverence and respect for our service members and their families here in Manatee County.
Most definitely. You think about, those of us who have served, whether it be our family members on accompanied tours or not, but those back at home that were holding it down, paying the bills, taking the kids to school, dealing with their ailments in the community, sending us care packages and things like that. The community within the military service, none other than that like that. You can't find that anywhere else in the world. But as we return back home, we're looking at the individuals that, like I said before, that held it down, lifted us up, made sure that we had everything in place back at home so we can focus on the mission. So this space, you're 100% correct. Yes, it is a veteran-centered project for veterans and their families, but we can't do any of these things without our community.
We can't. Lee, talk a little bit about why it is so important to recognize and honor veterans. Do you feel like some days we've lost that? Like it's different than maybe a generation ago? Or do you feel like it's back more than ever?
I think it is coming back. I think we're seeing the youth asking those questions to better understand military service. This is what my experience has been. Keeping in mind we have a full volunteer service now. The draft has not been implemented for quite some time, but even when you take a look at the folks that were drafted, they served this country honorably. They were fighting for things that they may not themselves have been able to take advantage of, but making sure that the freedoms that we currently have right now, having this podcast being recorded, is because of military veterans, in my opinion. And for those that support the military and support the overall nation of being secure and having the freedoms to walk around as we do, I think it's important that we reach out to our younger communities, which is one of the goals, one of the aspects that we're trying to build with this resource center with the school board's help of building that new elementary school, just adjacent to our property, bringing back the patriotic program. We called it the flag programs about a decade or so ago, but it's getting back into elementary schools and teaching kids not only about the importance of the flag, the Constitution, but overall patriotism, whether it be in uniform or just community service.
So do you foresee potentially like field trips from different schools and organizations, maybe, weekend seminars and sessions for our youth?
Most definitely. The program that I mentioned earlier is a 10-week program that Sarasota most recently used to just bring different topics to the elementary students up to the 5th grade. And on that 10th week, we would have veterans come in and test them on what they learned the first 9 weeks, and they would receive a certificate, flag, and things like that. But definitely field trips. We have indoor and outdoor space that's designed at this new parcel. So we're hoping to not only have the schools participate in some of the activities, but some of the JRTC units, some of the reserve units, so on and so forth, just making this a true community space that everyone can have something being taking place on that property.
It also sounds like this could be a destination for folks that people may want to come from outside Manatee County to see it. Is that the case too?
It really is. It's really shaping to be that. When it was brought up to me about 3-4 months ago, this is a destination, it's an attraction. I was like, slow down, it's not that. But as I start thinking more about it, it really is. With all the things that we're wanting to have involved as far as installations outside of the resource center, most definitely it's an attraction. But also the components that we plan on having with inside, whether it be a historical library with archival services, a museum, overall event space, connection with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, it definitely will be a destination attraction.
And so you mentioned this before, and maybe you could help clarify, so Manatee County's role now is obviously facilitating this major change, making it all happen. You talked about organizations prior. How important are these organizations going to be once the bricks are up and the building's up and the facilities, ready to be entertained by the public? How important are these different organizations that we've developed relationships with going to be for the longevity of the facility?
This is going to be a true public-private partnership. Mm-hmm. The board made it very clear last February that they do not want to have total control over this project. And one of the first aspects that the county administrator made to me was, we need to find that nonprofit to run the day-to-day operations. This is what nonprofits do all the time. They're better at it than most governments. They are actually in the field every single day talking to individuals who want to invest and partner with this type of a project. But the organizations that we've had conversations with, so far, some of the private family organizations, the federal government, obviously, it's going to be critical for the lasting aspects of the overall park. We can't do it as a government, whether it be due to politics, commissioners come and go, but nonprofits typically stand the test of time.
Mm-hmm. And we have received congressional funding, or I should say we are on track to receive congressional funding. We want to thank Congressman Vern Buchanan's office and the congressman for advocating for this project. $2.9 million is currently being pledged here. We will find out more at the end of the year as Congress does its thing. But this is something that's not only locally funded that we're trying to do, either from the board. We also are championing this at the state level, too. We did make it past the House and Senate. Unfortunately, we're not funded in the budget this year, but we're asking for those resources again for 2026. And it's something that is not only an effort from Lee's team, but also countywide. We are championing this project as something that's very important to Manatee County.
And how much of that, because I know, we rely a lot on, funding from the state and on a federal level, how important is funding on a personal level going to be for this initiative?
Well, again, it goes back to what we started to talk about earlier this morning, is that we're going to have components based on what the community wants to see. Mm-hmm. So not everyone in our community is going to have a close relationship to veterans and military service, but they may have related to, post-traumatic stress, suicide prevention, caregiver support. Those types of aspects, we're going to tap into the desires of the overall community to support those types of things for programming and services. So it's easy to reach out to the federal or state government and ask for dollars related to a veteran project. And we have many different streams in which we can pull from. But we also have to keep in mind we have many large corporations in our regional area that we've had conversations with that already have a veterans program or presence, but they want to have something a little bit larger to tag along with. And they've been very instrumental in sharing with us their vision of what they'd like to see at this parcel as well, how they can further their mission related to veterans, their employment, their overall well-being. So, tapping into all those different resources, again, it's been an initiative, or I should say a contingent that the board said, look, you need to go out and find other ways to pay for this and not come back to the board asking for money.
That's right.
So it's very important that we ask the average citizen, whether it be a $5 donation or a 50-cent donation, or round up at the Home Depot or what have you, every dollar to us as it comes to constructing this project and longevity for its programming and services, everyone's going to have to participate.
So if someone says, I want to get involved, I want to donate, I want to, how can I tell my company about this? What would you tell them?
Obviously, the easiest answer is to reach out to me so we can have a deeper conversation of what that truly looks like. Right now we're having conversations with the Manatee Community Foundation, and that's just being totally transparent of being a designated fund holder. We want to start our capital campaign sooner than later, and partnering with one of our local foundations to help us do that. It's a dedicated fund that the money can only go towards this project. To help those individuals who want to donate right now but don't want to write a check to the government for whatever reasons that may be, we will have an outlet for them to provide those funds and be held in a dedicated fund to only be used to construct and run programming and services out of that building.
I'm really glad you said that. So, Lee, I want to ask you, because some of the public challenges to this project has said things like, we already have organizations that are serving veterans. Why do we need another one? How do you respond to that, and how is this different?
Well, I will say it's a little bit different, keeping in mind that, when we have listening sessions, you're going to have folks that may not always have something glowing to say about the project, and that's perfectly fine. We invite those types of things because it keeps us on our task. It keeps us always open to being able to pivot in a particular direction. But I think what's more important to me is that when you look at all the places that veterans currently meet, it's most of the legacy organizations, the American Legions, the VFWs, who do extremely great work in our community, some of the largest organizations in the nation. We have quite a few of them throughout the community, but I started to ask those questions. We have so many posts because they weren't in those locations where veterans were currently finding homes. So it's the exact same thing that we're trying to do now. If we thought about this 15, 20 years ago, we'd be so far ahead. And I just think this continues the promise that was made by the nation and the commitment that the Board of County Commissioners over the last 2 or 3 decades has made to our residents here in Manatee County. We are going to put services and programs where our people are. And just having all these things under one roof, it really does tackle a lot of the hurdles that veterans and their families have had when they move to areas that they just aren't acclimated to understanding where everything is.
So I think it's absolutely beautiful that there's no upper limit on where this thing can go, on how great this thing can be. What do you hope that when it's all said and done, we've got a nonprofit running this and the county's still involved in whatever ways they can be, and we've got kids there on weekends, participating in programs, learning about service to their country. What do you hope that long-term lasting legacy of this project is?
I believe that, veterans, you can find us in every clime and place in our community, whether we're doctors, county administrators, deputies, directors, lawyers, sanitation workers, what have you. This is generational. We have an opportunity to do something outstanding, to truly make it a legacy of what, community service means. To me, military service is the highest form of community service. So, having something like this that will anchor not only Manatee County, but the region, keeping in mind where this project is located on the borders of Hillsborough and Pinellas County, we're going to be drawing from all those communities, showing them this is what community and public service looks like. And, oh, by the way, patriotism. And you really want to thank me for my service? Let's get down and support this.
Love it.
Yeah.
The name. So I know that's the big thing right now. Tell us more. What are we going to call this? How do we decide?
I don't get a vote. But we've compiled 235 surveys as of yesterday of, hopeful names that the community has provided. It wasn't really a contest. We're just getting ideas from the community, what they like to see it called. And I'll just tease a little bit. Some of the names that we're hearing is Veterans Memorial Park, Manatee's Legacy Park. Those are the type of renditions that we're seeing right now. The consultant team and myself are going to be bouncing this off our internal Veterans Task Force and also some of the community foundations and other community partners before we actually identify a Board of County Commissioner agenda that we want to attach this to. Right now, we're anticipating the October 21st meeting to have this before the board. But as long as we can have all those meetings with the folks that we can get as much feedback as we can to make sure that we've done everything we possibly can to provide the board really good names to choose from. And it's not going to be a dozen names or so, 2 or 3 best aligned names for what we're trying to achieve at their parcel. So I can't tell you exactly the name right now, but those are the teasers that we're seeing.
Hey, October 21 is right around the corner, right?
Yeah.
How important is that work that the consultant, you talked about it a little bit, and I saw the presentation at prior BOCC meeting. How important is that work for making sure that we're really getting an accurate sample, an accurate idea, and a kind of a fair voice, a cumulative voice of the community?
Well, I think it goes back to the conversation that we had about, the nonprofit running the day-to-day operations. When I was fortunate enough to come back in February, I was able to link up with the property management team, Aaron Raleigh and Kim Middleton, who had been holding this down ever since last February and keeping it moving. I think right now bringing on those consultants allows us to be in those rooms that we as county government employees may not have been able to get into. And just also keeping us abreast of what the overall world is doing related to marketing, fundraising, overall design. Because, again, we can build a building, but is it really going to be successful if it's just us who are leading the charge? So Veracruz Advisory is a 3-person team here locally. Two of the partners are military veterans themselves. The lead is a Marine veteran, and the other is an Army veteran. So they also have skin in the game as well. Not only just being residents, they're veterans. So they want to see this being successful. So they don't want to rush and just build just another building. They want to be intentional about all the things that we do of the overall design, the programs and services that are offered.
And I want to say something, too, that I really liked. We had a conversation about previously. This is not just a space for, maybe the typical person who's taken advantage of military or veteran services. Like, I think about my father, who's probably not listening to this, but if he is, hi, Daddy. But he would never go to something. Like, he's often just like, I'm not going to do that. As a retired colonel, I think there's some disassociation of like, that's not for me. Mm-hmm. That's for maybe for an enlisted, or maybe that's for someone who really needs benefits. And this is different. This is a project envisioned for his whole family. This is a project envisioned for him, for community, to have that missing link, right? And I think that's really cool that this is going to be a space that is not just for one segment of a veteran population, but for any and all veterans and their families who want to honor.
Most definitely. I mean, we're not all the same. We all served in uniform, but we all have different needs, wants, and desires. And granted, the county and the state have been doing great things related to veteran services, whether it be housing, more money for mental health, but we're not all necessarily needing those types of services. A lot of us, as I said very earlier on, is that we just need someone to talk with. That camaraderie that we had in uniform, you can't find it anywhere else. Yes, in the VFWs, the American Legions, the DAV posts and things like that, you can find somewhat of that. But you're talking about different generations of veterans that have certain things in common, but our overall lives, we're civilians now.
Yeah.
So how's your family doing? How are the kids doing? How's that job coming along? Yeah, I know you served back in the 80s and whatnot, and I appreciate that service, but how are you doing today?
Yeah, how's your health?
Yeah, how's your overall health? Have you gone in for your most recent checkup? Those things are hard conversations for families to have, because you're talking about mom and dad who are still mom and dad saying, no, I'm not doing it. But if you're talking to me, a fellow veteran, hey, you need to get in there and get checked in. And I'm going to tell you why. I wouldn't be sitting here and having a conversation with you right now if it weren't for the VA. So those are the hard conversations we as fellow veterans and concerned citizens can have with veterans. You can ease and massage that conversation, not hit them over the head, obviously. They just run away. But you're right. I mean, your dad is a prime example of someone, as far as when you think about perspective, they wouldn't use it.
Right.
Yeah. You look at all the aspects, they really would once they had an opportunity to really see all the things that are happening.
That's right.
And my dad's of a similar situation. He was in Vietnam. He was kind of indifferent about his service to the country, and he was in Ubon Ratchathani, Thailand. He was with the Air Force, and he never engaged with the VA until he needed hearing aids, and that was 5 years ago. And since then, he's had cancer removed. Some sketchy spots. He's had an AFib operation. He wouldn't be alive today if he wouldn't have needed hearing aids. Something as simple as that, and going to the VA, and that opened up this whole world of earned benefits that he didn't even know about. So I don't know. It's really remarkable what our teams do in referring people in being that first contact, and then referring them out to these larger organizations that really, really take care of our guys, men and women.
Most definitely. I mean, you're talking about individuals that, who are seeking out services for the most part. And during my time as a counselor, it was because they really now needed something. It wasn't proactive. When we got out of the service, we went through transition assistance program, teaching you all the things that you needed to understand of being a civilian again. But for me personally, I took that in Camp Pendleton, California. Well, I moved back home to Charlotte County, Florida.
Yeah.
None of those things related to that at all.
Yep.
So as I stop and I think, if we had something similar to what we're building out in Buckeye Road, a one-stop shop for all the things that can make me aware of Manatee County has to offer, I would have been able to overcome some of those hurdles, and who knows where I would be today if I were able to come those a lot sooner.
And I think of, to any of the givers listening right now, if you're a giver and, sometimes you give to these big national organizations and you don't really know what the impact may be. You hope and pray it goes to somewhere good, and maybe you trust that it's going to somewhere good. But this is local. This is something you can get behind. You can actually visit. You can see. You can participate in. You can meet with the people. Like, how great is it to have something at this magnitude locally to give to? So I think that for me, this is something like, maybe I was giving to something nationally, but now I'm like, okay, this is something that's actually directly benefiting my community that I live in every single day.
Every single day. You're right.
I liken it to like, so my dad went on the honor flight out to D.C., and that that ticker tape parade that they hold for them in the airport.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a good analogy for this place. Is it like a ticker tape parade, a return home, a welcome home that's here constantly in Manatee County, and it's got a presence all the time for anybody who might need it.
You're right. Military service isn't going away anytime soon. So you're going to always have different generations of veterans. So and the resource that we're building out there on Buckeye Road has the ability to change over the years. It's like many other things in our community. But I think that stepping out on the right foot, listening to community of designing exactly what this is going to look like, bringing in those different ideas from those folks is going to make this a worldwide success, in my opinion, and a true attraction, going forward.
Well, it's an incredible project. I'm so thankful you're leading it, Lee, and this is going to make an incredible difference in our community.
And that sound means we have reached our lightning round, world-famous lightning round, Lee Washington. Quick questions, even quicker answers. Are you ready, sir?
What's the prize?
The prizes are respect and admiration, which you already have. So,
okay.
All right. So, world-famous lightning round, Chambers Changes Conversations. Lee Washington, here we go. One word that comes to mind when you think of veterans.
Service.
A must-have feature you'd love to see at Veterans Memorial Park.
Parade grounds.
A veteran from history you'd most like to sit down and talk with.
Louis Chesty Puller.
Who is that?
U.S. Marine General, Lieutenant General.
Okay.
The namesake of one of his menu items.
Indeed. The Chesty Puller sandwich.
The Chesty Puller sandwich, yeah.
Okay.
I was wondering what that was. Okay.
Thanks to Nick Zara for that one.
That's awesome. A book, movie, or quote about service that inspires you.
Besides hoorah.
That's all encompassing. Follow me. Follow me.
The most rewarding part of your job as a veteran project manager.
Community engagement. I love just speaking with people. I really do.
One piece of advice for young people considering military service today.
Do your research and be honest with yourself.
Something about veterans that you wish the community better understood.
We're not all the same.
If you could describe the future of Veterans Memorial Park in just one word, what would it be?
Magnificent.
Did he make it in time? He did. All right. You have our admiration and respect.
I'll take a butterscotch or a scratch and sniff. Thank you very much.
There we go.
Congratulations, sir. So we mentioned it before. If people want to reach out to you, they want to, maybe throw an idea at you, see where it goes. How do they get in contact with you? How do they go about doing that?
Easy. They can dial the county main line. My extension is 3703. The main line, if anyone doesn't have it, is 941-748-4501. Or my cell, obviously, is 941-414-0768. And email lee.washington@mymanatee.org.
And how do they follow this project specifically?
They can go to mymanatee.org/Veterans Park and click Follow This Project.
Awesome, Lee. And thank you so much for giving us that inside look at your journey, the important work that you're doing here to honor and support Manatee County's veterans, from your own service in the Marine Corps to your leadership in developing the park. Your efforts ensure that the sacrifice, the service, it's all remembered in a very powerful way. So we really appreciate all that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
And thanks to you for joining us for another episode of Chambers, Changes, and Conversations. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and don't miss the story shaping our community. On behalf of the men and women doing work that matters behind the scenes for you, I'm Casey Zempel.
I'm Stephanie Garrison.
I'm Lee Washington.
Make it a great day to live, work, and play
in Manatee County.
The opinions expressed by guests of Chambers, Changes, and Conversations do not necessarily reflect those of Manatee County government or its employees.